Hello, I'm Christopher, a research software engineer with Research Software Workshops, and it's a very warm welcome to part 4 of Beginning R. So we're at chriswoods.com/beginning R, and we're now onto the loops page. So in the introduction, you were told that R will read your script one line at a time, starting at the top and running each line until it reaches the bottom. Now, while this is largely true, it is possible to make R repeat certain sections of code, certain lines of code, and we do that using loops. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to close list.r. I'm going to create a new R script. I'm going to call this R script loops.r or loop.r. Okay, so let's say we have a word. I could put the word here and I can say hello, and then I'm going to print it. So far, so not interesting. But here we go. Okay, hello. Now, if we want to print a second word, we could assign that to another variable, even to the same variable, and we can print it again. So hello R. Now, we could keep doing this, and if we wanted to print lots of words, we could keep assigning them to a variable and then typing print, but this is very wasteful. I'm typing a lot, so I'm going to hurt my hands, but also these two print lines, print word and print word, they're identical to each other. They're just printing whatever data is available in the variable called word. Now, if we could manage to write that line only once, then we can save some typing, so we want to be able to repeat this line several times. Now, to repeat it, what I can do is I can create a list called words, and then instead of basically assigning one item at a time to the variable, I'm going to put multiple bits of data, and I'm going to use a list to do that. So this is now a list that contains 2 words. Now, to repeat the printing for every single word in this list words, I will use what's called a for loop. So we type for, and for is a special keyword, which is going to mean we're going to repeat some lines, we're going to repeat some code. And we then have a variable called word, and that's going to be in words. Sorry, there's no comma there. And then we have an open curly bracket, and then we print it. And I am going to explain this in a second, but let's just show you that this actually does work. Okay. So you should see now that I've run this, that we have printed hello and then R. And so we've got to now say, how is this working? What is it actually doing? Now, what it's done is basically it's looped over and repeated this line of code here. So there are sections within this loop, which is called the syntax of the loop, which we're going to work through. So the very first thing, the scaffolding of how the loop works, is this keyword here, for. So for means this is a loop which will be looping for something. We then have here, which is in, which is saying what are we going to loop in, and then we have this open curly bracket at the end, and this top part here is beginning to set up the actual loop. Now, for something in something, what is the somethings? Well, in this case, the something should be the list of items that you want to loop over. So in this case, we have words, and I'm going to add some more words in here. Now this loop will basically be performed for every single item in the list. Now for each time we run through this loop, the actual individual item in the list is going to be assigned to this variable. So for word in words means go over each of these items and then assign each one in turn to this variable called word. We then have this curly bracket, and what the curly bracket is doing is it's basically defining the body of code that will be repeated for every single iteration of this loop. So all of the code between these two curly brackets will be executed for every single time we loop over this loop. So for the first time we loop over the loop, for word in words, the first item is hello, so we assign hello to word, and then we print word which is equal to hello. We've printed hello. Then we go back and we say, are there any more items in words? Yes, there is. We have an item called are. So for the next variable, we then say word is are, and we print are. Then we go back to the top and we say, are we on to the next item? Is there anything else in words? Yes, there is. There's the next item is sum. And so word is set equal to sum, and then we print sum. Hence you see this here. We then come back to the top and we say, is there anything else in words? Yes, there is more. So word is set equal to more, and we print more. We then come up to the top again. We say, is there anything else in words? Yes, we still have words itself to do. So we print word is set equal to the string words. We print that to the screen. Then we come to the top again and we say, is there anything else left in this? No, there isn't now. We've gone through all of it. And then so we end. And indeed, we can now write down here, print, we have finished. So there you are. We've gone through every single word in words. And then at the end, we have finished. Now, all of the lines of code, which are between the curly brackets, will be run every single iteration, every single time we go around this loop. So I can type other lines of code. So let's say here, I'm going to type loop. So if I now run, you can see that what we've printed here is loop hello, loop are, loop sum, loop more, loop words, etc. Okay. So I can do a similar thing. So if I now change this now to print word and then print something else, let's say print goodbye, because I can put anything I'd like into this loop. Then get rid of this part. Then you can see what we're going to print now is hello, because we printed the first word hello. Then we print goodbye, so we have hello, goodbye. Then we've said, is there anything else in words? Yes, there's are, so we're now going to print the are. And then we print goodbye again. Now see how goodbye is repeated in the second example. Again, as I said, this is because it's inside the body of the loop. It's within these curly brackets. If goodbye was not in the curly brackets, then it would not be repeated. And so we only perform this once all of the iterations of the loop have completed. Also notice that this placement of curly brackets is kind of convention. It would have been perfectly possible for me to write this like this, or I've put this all onto one line and that would be fine. However, this makes it much harder to read, and so generally what we recommend is that for every single line of code you run, you place it on a new line and you just indent it so that we can easily see that every single line is contained and will be repeated within the loop. It just helps other readers to know what they're doing. Now, a lot of the power of loops comes from being able to put a lot of different things in the place of the variables. So, for example, you can actually put lists in directly. So what I can do here is I can say forward in C, hello, R. I'm now directly creating a list that I can loop over, as you can see here. Hello, R. Now, as well as looping over lists of strings, we can also loop over numbers. So if you remember seek that we used before, if I want to loop over a sequence of numbers from 1 to 10, I can use that. So seek is producing a list of numbers from 1 to 10. If I now print that, I will then get them printed here to the screen. Notice in this case I've used a variable that I've called I. Just by convention, programmers tend to use I to mean an integer which is being looped over in a loop. Now, of course, I don't have to just loop from 1 to 10. If we remember last time from seek, we can actually loop over lots of different ranges. So if we do 10, 1, minus 1, and then we print I, and then I'm going to print at the end blast off just because I can be a little bit childish. Here we go. It's now printed out 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, blast off. Okay, so I've taken you through all of this page. Please do have another read through for this just to make sure you're happy with the syntax of loops. Once you get this, a lot of R will become a lot easier to understand. And then what we have at the bottom here is we have your exercise. What I want you to do is I want you to experiment with loop.r, and I want you to basically make it loop over different things. So just as I've done here, have a play with it, loop over some different things, press pause, that way I won't give you the answer too early, and when you come back I will give you the answer. Okay, you've unpaused now, so I assume you're ready to have the answer. So let's now start off with a very simple loop. So we're going to create a loop called words, and we're going to assign that hello R again. There we are. And then I'm just going to do for word in words, and we're just going to print it. Notice how my choice of variable names makes this almost sound like a slightly bad version of English. So for word in words, print word. It sort of almost makes sense. Now let's now loop over a sequence. So let's get the number of words in here. Well, the number of words, if you remember correctly, was length words. So what we could do now is instead of looping for word in words, we could actually do for I in sequence 1 to num words. And then now what we would print is words I, remembering looking up the ith version. There we are. So num words is 2, so this is a sequence from 1 to 2, so this is just 1 and 2. So first I is set equal to 1. Words 1 is hello. We've printed hello. Then do we have anything left? Yes, we do. We have number 2 to look at, so I is set equal to 2. Then words 2 is R, and it's printed R to the screen. So we can see now that in both cases we printed the same thing. One was using for word in words, and the other one was using, if I just finish this, there we are. The other one was using the sequence itself. They've both achieved the same thing, but sometimes you might find you actually want the value, the index number as well. And indeed, if I do this, I do paste I, and then words I, what you can see here is it's actually now counted here, the word number. Excellent. So we've now completed the exercise. That is the end of the loop section. So we've now finished part 4. So return to the next video for part 5, and I look forward to seeing you there.